Okay, let's unpack this. We've got a fascinating deep dive ahead of us today, pulling from sources that really take us inside the world of the aircraft carrier.
Yeah, we're drawing heavily from Tom Clancy's book, Carrier, A Guided Tour, which is just incredibly detailed.
It gives you that rare look behind the curtain, doesn't it?
Hmm.
Moving past just the idea of these huge ships.
Right, getting into the nuts and bolts, the tech, and crucially, the people who actually make them work day in, day out.
Exactly. So our mission today really is to cut through all that complexity, try and understand what makes these powerful machines tick,
From the big strategic picture, why they even exist,
and the history, how we got here.
right down to the challenging life on board and the tech that's pushing the limits.
Think of this as maybe a shortcut, a way to get really well informed about one of the most potent symbols of military power out there.
Yeah, we'll uncover some surprising stuff, hopefully. Maybe have a few aha moments about why things are done the way they are on a carrier.
And we should definitely acknowledge, like the source material does, that this kind of insight, it only happens because of some pretty extraordinary access.
That's a key point. The author got help from senior leaders, admirals, generals, the Secretary of the Navy.
People like Admiral J. Johnson, General Chuck Krulak, Secretary John Dalton, loads of others.
And it goes right down to the thousands of unnamed sailors and aviators on the George Washington Battle Group who shared their work.
That level of access is really the foundation for everything we're going to talk about today.
It just highlights the incredible scale of it all, the human effort involved.
So what's in it for you listening in? Well, whether you're just curious about modern military stuff or you kind of need to get up to speed on how these forces actually operate
We're going to dig into why carriers are still so important strategically.
and what life is really like inside one of these giant, complex machines.
So where do we start? Maybe the strategic why.
Yeah, let's do that. Why are carriers such a cornerstone, especially, after the Cold War?
Well, the source points to a core problem in what it calls muddled times.
Which means,
Basically, asking friendly countries for basing rights isn't always straightforward. It can get politically tricky.
right, like you can't always count on getting permission to operate from someone else's territory.
Exactly. The source mentions George Bush managed it for the Persian Gulf in '91, but Bill Clinton, he ran into trouble trying to get access in '97 and '98 for Iraq issues.
Why is that?
Sometimes neighbors would rather just put up with a local troublemaker, like Saddam Hussein back then, than risk hosting forces that might draw attacks onto their own soil. It's a tough calculation for them.
Okay, so that limits your options for projecting force.
Pretty much leaves you with two choices.
Yeah.
Operate from way back home, which takes ages and huge transport fleets.
Or operate from ships at sea.
And that's where sea-based air power really shines. It offers some unique advantages that land bases just can't match, especially for long-term presence far away.
Okay, well, like what specific advantages are we talking about?
Well, first up is long-term presence.
Mhm.
Unlike a land base where politics can shift and you might get asked to leave,
Right.
a naval force can stay on station almost indefinitely as long as you keep the supplies coming and rotate the crews. We're talking months, even years sometimes.
So you're not dependent on local politics staying friendly.
Precisely. The source mentions the naval embargoes of Iraq and the Balkans and the lead up to the '91 Gulf War as prime examples of that sustained presence.
Got it. What else?
Second, multiple missions simultaneously. These naval forces have really robust command and control built in, and the carrier aircraft, they're designed from the ground up to be multi-role.
Meaning they can do lots of different things.
Yeah, they can conduct attacks, suppress enemy air defenses, do precision strikes, secure the immediate area with helicopters, defend against missiles, often all at the same time. That flexibility is critical when things are changing fast.
So it's not just a bomber or just a fighter, it's a whole toolkit.
Exactly. And third, they generate a really wide variety of effects. Just having a carrier group show up can range from coercive diplomacy to, well, outright intimidation for an adversary.
And the aircraft add more layers to that.
Huge layers, from surveillance, putting special forces ashore, to delivering all sorts of aerial munitions. And here's a key thing the source notes. Because they're at sea, they aren't usually bound by the same restrictions on what kinds of weapons they can carry compared to operating from a friendly nation's base.
Meaning the potential threat is much broader.
Potentially, yeah. An enemy might face anything from precision bombs to cluster munitions. The source even mentions the nuclear strike capability, though that's obviously a very different level of consideration.
That range of options, free from those land-based political strings, that's a huge strategic factor.
Absolutely. It's fascinating, too, to look back at how this all evolved, the very beginning of naval aviation.
Eugene Ely, right? Flying off the USS Pennsylvania in 1910.
That's the one. A pretty daring start.
And then World War I really showed the potential.
Yeah, the British had some success using planes launched from towed barges and converted ships, attacking German Zeppelin hangars, things like that. It became pretty obvious to other navies that taking high-performance aircraft to sea was the future.
So that spurred development.
It did. After the war, Japan built the Hosho in 1919, the first purpose-built carrier. The Brits kept converting ships, but also started the Hermes, their first built from the keel up.
And then there was that naval treaty, the Washington Naval Treaty of 1922.
Surprisingly important, yeah. It limited battleships, but it actually allowed nations to convert unfinished battleship or battle cruiser hulls into carriers.
It seems counterintuitive.
Well, there was a catch, or maybe a hedge. They were allowed to arm these early carriers with 8-inch cruiser guns. Just in case the whole flying thing didn't really work out, they'd still be useful warships.
Hedging their bets.
Totally. And the U.S. Navy jumped on this with 2 big battle cruiser hulls. They became the USS Lexington and Saratoga, CV-2 and CV-3.
And the Navy wanted them to be top of the line.
Oh yeah, biggest, fastest, most capable. When they were commissioned in 1927, they were huge. 36,000 tons, 35 knots fast, carrying up to 90 planes.
90 planes. That's double what others had then.
Roughly double, yeah. And they introduced things like the island superstructure, which is standard now.
Fast forward to World War II, and carriers are king.
Absolutely. The Japanese Kido Butai, that striking force of 6 carriers, hit Pearl Harbor. But that same force was eventually stopped at Midway, a huge turning point.
And by later in the war?
By Leak Gulf in 1944, things had completely shifted. Japanese carriers were basically just used as decoys and got sunk by U.S. air power.
While the U.S. built up this massive force, Task Force 3458.
Under Admiral Misher by 44, yeah, probably the most powerful naval force in history up to that point. They won battle after battle across the Pacific, losing only 1 light carrier, the Princeton, in 2 years of really intense fighting. Incredible record.
So after the war, things changed again. Big cutbacks, but new tech.
Massive reductions, yeah. But also, those early atomic bomb tests showed that concentrating ships was dangerous, so they leaned back towards single-carrier battle groups for a while.
But technology kept marching on.
Angled flight decks, steam catapults, jets, guided missiles, nuclear weapons, it all came pouring in.
And battleships faded out.
Largely replaced by guided missile destroyers and cruisers as the carrier's bodyguards. The source makes a really striking point here. Even without nukes, a single post-war carrier packed more punch than an entire WWII task group.
Wow.
And then, late 70s, the Nimitz-class nuclear supercarriers start showing up. New planes like the F-14 Tomcat come online.
And the strategic focus shifts.
Big time. The main driver for carrier development becomes countering the growing Soviet Navy under Admiral Gorshkov. That Cold War competition really pushed the technology.
So it's this constant cycle. Tech, conflict, strategy, lessons learned, driving the next evolution.
Exactly. Which brings us to the modern machine itself. Stepping inside a Nimitz-class carrier, these things are just colossal. Over 95,000 tons displaced.
Hard to even picture. And the building process itself is massive, starting months before they even lay the keel in these giant dry docks.
Like Dry Dock 12 at Newport News Shipbuilding. Built on huge wooden and concrete blocks, it's ancient tech supporting cutting-edge construction.
And inside, you mentioned miles of passageways.
A total labyrinth. And you learn about knee knockers real fast.
What are those?
Those raised steel thresholds and doorways, they add strength, but man, they're brutal on your shins if you're not paying attention.
Sounds painful. And the passageways are narrow.
Yeah, narrower than on other warships, because carriers are what they call volume limited. Every bit of space for people takes away space for jet fuel, bombs, spare parts.
And moving stuff around is tough.
Can be. The source mentions using bucket brigades, sometimes literally passing supplies hand to hand down a line of people. Really illustrates the tight quarters.
And incredibly crowded, right? How many people live and work there?
The source puts the number around 6,000 personnel. That breaks down to about 155 officers and nearly 3,000 sailors for the ship itself.
Plus the air wing.
Right. Another 365 officers and 2,500 enlisted for the planes. Then you add staff, contractors, visitors. It gets packed.
And living conditions reflect that.
Definitely. The source notes that sailors today expect a certain minimum comfort level, which designers have to factor in, but it's always a trade-off against space and cost. Officer staterooms are typically two-person double bunks,
Shared bathrooms?
often community heads and showers, yeah. Limited storage, small desk, a sink. Roommates often pool their electronics, like TVs, and tap into the ship's network. Interestingly, the source mentions getting CNN via the Challenge Athena satellite system back then.
That connection to the outside must be vital.
Hugely important for morale. The source also gives us a peek into some key departments.
Like supply?
Managing just vast amounts of everything, millions of gallons of jet fuel down to paper towels. Then there's the weapons department, maintaining the ship's own defenses, Sea Sparrow missiles, phalanx guns, machine guns.
And training is ongoing.
Constant need for professional development. You can't stand still.
The source highlights the Command Master Chief, the CMC. What's their role?
They're the senior enlisted sailor in a squadron, or for the whole ship. Kind of like a super experienced shop foreman, making sure the aircraft are ready, but also a key advisor and advocate for the enlisted crew, sort of the glue holding that part of the structure together.
There's even a mention of the dirty shirt mess.
Yeah, that sounds like a more informal officer's mess. Somewhere pilots and junior officers can eat, maybe still in flight suits. Often preferred, the source says, for the relaxed vibe and maybe better food. Squadrons have the reserve tables there.
These little details really bring the scale down to a human level. What about the future? CVN-77 is mentioned.
Right, the carrier built after the Ronald Reagan. It was designed as a transition ship, a bridge to the next big class, the CVX.
So trying out new tech on an existing hull.
Basically, yeah. It uses the Nimitz hull and power plant up to the main deck, but above that, it's packed with new stuff.
Like what?
Things like a ship service interface network, a digital backbone connecting all the ship's systems, zonal electrical distribution managing power more flexibly and with more redundancy, and improved communications, tackling bandwidth issues they had with older systems.
Part of that smart ship, smart buy idea.
Exactly. Using technology, this open architecture networked approach, to eventually operate the ship with fewer people. Manning is a huge, huge cost driver, so reducing crew size is a major goal.
All this structure, tech, people, it all comes together for flight ops. The heartbeat of the carrier, and it needs speed.
Incredible speed and precision. Carriers need to hit at least 33 knots, that's over 60 kilometers per hour, to launch and recover planes safely in different winds. And sustained speed, maybe 20 knots plus, for getting places fast.
Which loops back to nuclear power.
The gold standard, as the source calls it. High sustained speeds for weeks without refueling the ship itself. And the reactors can go 15 years, maybe 1,000,000 miles between their own refueling. That kind of endurance is priceless.
And the power they generate fuels things like the catapults.
Those steam catapults, the source has that great description. Steam-powered pistons that can throw a Cadillac half a mile. You absolutely need them to fling heavy planes like an F-14 or an E-2 off that short deck.
How does it actually work?
It's pure brute force, really. High-pressure steam builds up, then bam, it's released, pushing a shuttle linked to the plane's nose gear. Pilot goes full throttle, salutes the shooter.
The catapult officer.
Right. They hit the button and the plane gets slammed forward. Multiple Gs, 0 to flying speed, maybe 150 knots in about 100 yards in 2 seconds. Just incredible acceleration.
Intense.
Yeah.
But dangerous, too. You mentioned cold shots.
Yeah, that's a major hazard. If the catapult doesn't deliver enough power, the plane just doesn't get up to speed. It can literally just roll off the end of the deck into the ocean.
Oh, wow.
So the catapult officers, who are always experienced aviators themselves, take that responsibility very, very seriously. Their judgment is critical.
And landing is just as tough. Insanely difficult, the source says.
Maybe even harder, consistently. Absolute precision every single time. It's what really defines naval aviators. And the landing area isn't straight ahead.
It's angled off to the side, to port.
Yeah, about 14 degrees off the center line. That's a crucial safety design.
Why?
So if a pilot misses the arresting wires, if they don't trap, the plane is already angled away from all the parked aircraft up forward. They can just power up and go around for another try.
Ah, clever. Prevents catastrophic accidents.
Exactly. And pilots are trained, drilled relentlessly to slam the throttles to full power the instant their wheels touch down.
Seems counterintuitive, hitting the gas when you land.
It is, but it's vital. If they don't feel that jolt of the wire catching them, that forward slam, they're already at full power and can fly right off the angled deck. That's called a bolter.
And that happens often.
Most naval aviators collect plenty of bolters in their careers. It's part of the process. The landing signals officers, the LSOs, are the ones guiding them in.
They're the ones on the platform at the back.
Yeah, using radio and light signals. They're the only people on deck during flight ops without helmets because they need to see and hear everything clearly, an incredibly high-stress job.
All this danger and precision, serving one purpose, operating the aircraft. These specialized tools.
Odd hybrids, the source calls them. They have to perform like land-based planes, but also be tough enough for carrier landings and launches. Plus, do unique sea jobs, sub-hunting, ship defense, moving supplies.
Which makes them super capable and flexible, but also
very expensive. Let's look at a few key ones the source focuses on. The F-14 Tomcat arrived in '74.
the Top Gun plane.
Right. Designed as a long-range interceptor, mainly against Soviet bombers, but it had serious, sometimes tragic problems with its original TF-30 engines. An engine upgrade that was planned never quite happened.
So when the Cold War ended, its main mission kind of faded.
It did, and its high cost became an issue. But it found a second life, adding targeting pods like Lantern and digital reconnaissance pods like TARPs.
It became a strike and recon plane.
A potent one, yeah. Crews mentioned in the source, like the VF-102 Diamondbacks, felt they really had a mission again. They were flying tons of missions and exercises, often longer ones than the Hornets could do because the Tomcat just carried more fuel, so adaptation saved it for a while.
Cool. What about the workhorse, the F/A-18 Hornet?
That came out of the mid-'70s, needed to replace old A-7 attack planes and F-4 fighters. Congress actually pushed the Navy and Marines to adapt one of the Air Force's lightweight fighter designs.
And the YF-17 design won out.
Yeah, from McDonnell, Douglas, and Northrop. But making it carrier tough, that took major work. The source says about 4,000 pounds of extra structure, like 20% of the plane's weight, plus more gear, radar for missiles, targeting pods. It basically became a whole new aircraft.
And they built a lot of them.
Around 1,500. In Desert Storm, they showed their flexibility, shot down Iraqi jets, and then went on to drop bombs. But the source notes they weren't as accurate with unguided bombs as, say, the A-6 was.
And when the A-6 Intruder retired,
The Hornet became the Navy's only carrier strike plane for a time. A lot rested on its shoulders. Future planes, like the Joint Strike Fighter, are trying to avoid that big structural penalty for carrier ops. And the Hornet sold well internationally, too.
you mentioned the A-6 retirement. The source suggests that was a big deal.
Huge impact. Retiring the A-6E Intruder bomber and the Ka-60 tanker version in the early '90s, mainly to save money, wiped out the dedicated medium attack community. And it really hurt the Air Wing's ability to refuel planes in the air.
Who picked up that flag?
The S-3 Viking, originally an anti-submarine plane, it and its electronic surveillance version, the ES-3 Shadow, started carrying buddy refueling pods under their wings.
But not as capable.
Nowhere near. An S-3 could maybe offload 8,000 pounds of fuel. The old Ka-60 tanker, over 24,000 pounds. Big difference. The ES-3 did bring good electronic snooping capabilities, though.
Okay, shifting to the eyes and ears in the sky. The E-2 Hawkeye.
Absolutely critical. That's your airborne early warning, the AEW plane. Command and control, tracking everything out there. The E-2C version came in the '70s, designed to work with the F-14. It could track maybe 2,000 targets at once.
That's incredible data processing.
It is. They keep upgrading them. They're expected to fly well into the 2020s at least. It's actually the biggest plane on the carrier deck, 80-foot wingspan, though not the heaviest, and training for it is tough, especially those carrier landings.
And the next generation fighter.
The FA-18EF Super Hornet, designed to replace the Tomcat and the older Hornets, specifically fixing things like the original Hornet's limited range and fuel. That's planned as the backbone, maybe 3 squadrons per carrier.
Any plans to consolidate some of these support roles?
Yeah, they're looking at a common support aircraft, CSA, one plane to maybe replace the E-2, the S-3, possibly tanker and electronic warfare roles too. Big challenge is finding the money for it.
And then there's the really futuristic stuff. Uninhabited combat aerial vehicles, UCAVs,
Yeah.
drones.
Definitely on the horizon, according to the source. Manned aircraft are just getting incredibly expensive. UCAVs could offer performance we can barely imagine now, maybe maneuvering like missiles.
Flown by pilots remotely.
From consoles on the ship, maybe even back on land. And the huge advantage, if you lose one, it's a financial hit, yes, but it's not pilots' lives lost.
The source mentioned early drone tests.
Yeah, back in the '70s. Navy flew an F-4 Phantom against an unmanned Firebee drone in maneuvering trials. The drone won consistently, shows the potential unmanned systems have had for a long time.
So the future air wing looks like a mix.
Yeah.
Advanced manned planes and these potentially revolutionary unmanned ones.
Always that tension between capability, cost, risk, and technology.
And all this hardware, all this tech, it means nothing without the people. The culture of naval aviation is key.
Absolutely. It all starts at NAS, Pensacola, Florida. Every Navy, Marine, and Coast Guard aviator begins there. Great weather for year-round flying.
Training ramped up massively for WWII.
Hugely, over 1,100 a month at the peak. Settled down after the war to maybe 1,500, 2,000 a year. Still a very demanding pipeline.
And students make a choice early on. Pilot or NFO.
Naval aviator, the pilot, or naval flight officer, operating the systems and back. Eyesight is often the big hurdle for pilots. The source notes, many NFOs started out wanting to fly but didn't meet the vision standards. But NFOs can still command squadrons, even air wings.
And the toughest part of training, the biggest hurdle.
Learning to land on the carrier, making those traps, the source calls it insanely difficult, requires that absolute precision every time. The description of lining up for your first qual, terrifying, heart-stopping, insane, gives you a real sense of the mental pressure.
After a couple of years, they head to a Fleet Readiness Squadron, FRS.
Yep, that's the final checkout. They learn the specifics of their assigned aircraft tactics, weapons, systems. The instructors there, the IPs, are veteran pilots. They're the final quality control. The FRS is like the keeper of the community's tribal knowledge, the source says. Where lessons are passed down, new ideas are born.
And once they hit the fleet, they get a call sign.
Usually sticks for life. Nicknames based on anything, your name, something you did, a physical trait, Dusty Roads, Harley Davidson, easy ones, or maybe Fingers if you lost some, Hoser if you fired your cannon too much. Essential for radio calls and just ready room life.
Memorable. What's the typical career path look like?
A cycle, usually. Sea tours on the carrier, shore tours, maybe instructing back at the FRS, crucial department head tours at sea for promotion, maybe a joint staff job, then hopefully squadron executive officer, XO, and then commanding officer, SEO.
The source also talks about the culture itself, how it developed.
Yeah, initially very confident, success-driven, based on WWII victories and tough training. But the Vietnam era brought challenges. Unreliable new jets, a difficult war. It led to more of a live for today attitude, the source suggests.
Creating a sort of isolated subculture.
That's how the source frames it, yeah. Distinct even within the Navy. Characterized sometimes by heavy drinking, wild behavior, which, according to the source, was sometimes tolerated by senior leaders as a way to let off steam from the war.
Integrating women was also a major cultural shift, and a difficult one.
Very difficult, as described. Being barred from combat roles for so long meant women just didn't have the same career paths or promotion opportunities as men. Second-class citizens is the phrase used in the source regarding certain tracks.
But that started changing.
Yes, especially as women served effectively in combat support roles in places like Panama, Desert Shield Storm. Their professionalism and bravery made people question the restrictions.
Then the tailhook incident in '91 really blew things open.
Yeah, it exposed those underlying cultural problems. The source uses terms like hard drinking, hard living, womanizing, daredevil, isolated tribal culture. And a badly handled investigation afterwards damaged a lot of careers, unfairly in many cases.
So progress since then has been happening, but maybe slowly.
That's the impression. Admiral J. Johnson is quoted saying the Navy was kind of through that initial integration phase for carriers and air wings by the late 90s. Surface ships were still ongoing, needing modifications and getting the right critical mass of female personnel aboard.
Johnson also mentioned quality of life.
He did. Noted that sailors deployed at the tip of the spear are often working hard but feel engaged. But those back home needed a better tempo, better maintained gear. That was a focus for him.
And maintaining core skills remained vital.
Things like anti-submarine warfare, ASW. He called it Navy stuff. Things only the U.S. Navy could really do well. Plus, adding new capabilities like theater ballistic missile defense, TBMD.
Ultimately comes back to the immense responsibility on individuals.
Yeah, the source makes the point that an aviator's judgment call could be the difference between peace and war, potentially linking right back to the president.
Which brings us to training. That quote, "You fight like you train."
From Randy Duke Cunningham, Vietnam ace. It underscores how vital realistic training is. His generation got the first real force-on-force training, like Ta Pi Jun, and the results were dramatic. A 650% improvement in the Navy's air-to-air kill ratio in Vietnam. Amazing.
Getting a whole carrier battle group, a CVBG, ready for deployment must be massive.
Huge undertaking. The source says they spend about twice as long working up and recovering as they do actually deployed.
And changes after Goldwater Nichols affected training.
Yeah, it shifted the ownership and training oversight partly away from just the Navy to joint commands like U.S. Atlantic Command, USACOM, integrating the carrier group into the bigger joint picture.
What does the readiness cycle involve?
It's layered. Training for the ship, the air wing, the escorts, supply ships, maybe Marines if they're deploying together. Mentors oversee this. Squadrons do their own spin-up training, pilots getting current, maintainers fixing the jets. Deployed units always get priority for the best gear and parts.
And a key phase happens out in the desert.
Right. At Naval in Nevada. The Naval Strike and Air Warfare Center, NSAWC. The whole air wing goes there for about 3.5 weeks. They practice flying together, complex strike packages, air defense, fighting as a team.
Against simulated enemies.
Yeah, aggressor squadrons flying adversary tactics. It all culminates in the advanced training phase, ATP. That's a really intense period.
And the final exam before they go, the JTFEX.
Joint Task Force Exercise, that's the big one. Tests the whole battle group ship, air wing, escorts, everyone in a complex multi-day scenario. The source details JTFEX 97-3 for the USS George Washington Group.
What made that one special?
It included new stuff, like simulating a ballistic missile threat, TBMD. The enemy forces had SCOD-type missiles, maybe with chemical warheads.
Yeah.
The U.S. forces had to practice detecting, tracking, and shooting them down with Patriot missiles or the Navy's Aegis system. USACOM was watching that closely.
It also involved an evacuation scenario.
Yeah.
NEO.
Non-combatant evacuation operation, yeah. Marines had to pull civilians out of a simulated hotspot. And the exercise controllers deliberately amped up the tension, trying to provoke a fight with simulated Koronin forces while the NEO was happening.
Putting the commanders in a tough spot.
Exactly. Admiral Mullen and his staff had to keep a lid on it, manage that eyeball-to-eyeball situation without starting a war, simulating real-world crisis management.
The source describes a tense standoff at sea.
Yeah, between a U.S. Aegis cruiser, the USS Normandy, and an aggressor destroyer, the USS Nicholson. The aggressor was trying to get in position to simulate firing on the carrier, basically daring the U.S. ship to fire first.
And the U.S. cruiser.
Had to use aggressive maneuvering, hassling the aggressor, the source calls it, constantly putting itself between the threat and the carrier without shooting. The ship was apparently heeling over 40 degrees in turns.
Wow, high-stakes maneuvering.
Lasted for hours. Successfully preventing the attack without firing was seen as passing a major test, buying time for the evacuation.
Life aboard during this sounds exhausting. Constant drills.
General quarters, GQ, yeah. Button up the ship, everyone runs to their action station, practice fighting fires, handling damage, manning weapons. Even in training, it's stressful. There's an anecdote about a young sailor getting hurt during a fuel spill in GQ, highlights the real dangers, but also the crew's immediate reaction to help.
And flight ops are running full tilt.
Non-stop. The source paints a picture of the air boss and mini boss up in the control tower, using grease pencils on windows alongside computers to track planes. Launch, recover, constant, dangerous practice choreography.
Planes cycling quickly.
Especially the Hornets, with their shorter range. Launch, hit the simulated target, back quick, refuel, rearm, launch again. And the C-2 CAD planes flying in supplies, mail, people taking stuff off. The lifeline.
Any downtime at all.
Some. Pilots grabbing food in the dirty shirt mess, talking about the missions they just flew over the beach. That informal debriefing is part of the learning, too.
The source then uses all this to paint a hypothetical future scenario, set in 2016.
Yeah, a fictional crisis to show how these carrier capabilities might play out. It starts weirdly specific. A geologist finds a huge scandium deposit in Sri Lanka.
Gabium.
It becomes vital for a breakthrough in superconductors, announced by Sandia Labs, allows for super powerful, compact electric motors.
Okay. And this changes things in Sri Lanka.
Dramatically.
Yeah.
The long-warring Tamil and Sinhalese factions actually unite, seeing this resource as major leverage against India.
And India's reaction. The scenario posits India is weak after a nuclear war with Pakistan.
Yeah, reeling from that devastation. But India still sees Sri Lanka as basically its backyard. The prime minister is hesitant, but his defense minister pushes hard for military action to stop Sri Lankan independence. Can't look weak.
The U.S. decides to intervene.
Yes, to protect Sri Lanka and UN partners aiming for minimal bloodshed. The scenario describes a very rapid U.S. response. Pre-positioned ships from Diego Garcia race to unload gear for a 25 25,000-strong joint force in Sri Lanka, an amphibious ready group, the 82nd Airborne. The message is clear. India needs to back off.
Leading to a confrontation at sea.
U.S. Admiral Connolly faces incoming Indian forces. The U.S. decides on a demonstration of force short of sinking ships.
How?
4 Super Hornets launch hypersonic cruise missiles targeted using templates for the Indian carrier Virat, Mach 6 missiles hitting precisely, described as stunning. Salvoed at intervals so the world can watch. A clear, brutal message.
But the Indian defense minister still pushes.
Yes. India launches ballistic missiles from its mainland towards Sri Lanka.
And the U.S. TBMD kicks in.
Exactly. Satellites detect the launch, tracking data flows. Admiral Connolly authorizes engagement. Aegis ships and Army Patriot batteries on Sri Lanka take them out in layers.
And then plans for a counterstrike.
Yeah, the scenario outlines using stealth F-25Bs and Super Hornets with special bombs for a precision night attack on Indian command bunkers and missile sites.
So this whole detailed hypothetical really ties together all the pieces: power projection, advanced weapons, missile defense, showing their potential role in a future high-stakes crisis.
It takes it from theory to a plausible, if fictional, application.
So looking ahead, what's the verdict on carriers? Still relevant despite the cost.
The source argues yes. 2 main points. Big deck carriers are still the most flexible and efficient way to do sea-based air power, period. And that capability gives national leaders unique options in crises that other assets just can't provide.
But designs will change. The CVX program.
That's the plan. Transitioning from the Nimitz class to something new, focused on 21st century missions. Might take a couple of transitional designs to get all the new tech worked out.
What drives the new designs?
Size, shape, but especially manning. Using tech to cut crew size, the smart ship idea again. Building open architecture ships that plug into networked battle forces where everyone sees the same picture.
Power source is still debated.
They looked at everything: gas turbines, diesel, nuclear. Nuclear has downsides, cost, environmental perception, but the endurance and sheer power it provides. The source suggests it's still the likely winner for supercarriers. Reactors are just really good at making the steam needed for efficient turbines on big ships.
Future weapons beyond planes. Lasers.
Possibly. Missile launchers like on CVN-77, maybe. But perhaps first-gen laser CIWS close-in weapons to zap supersonic anti-ship missiles? Even catapults might change, maybe electromagnetic launch instead of steam?
And new aircraft beyond Super Hornet and JSF.
The source hints at stuff so wondrous it couldn't describe them. But the big driver, again, is cost, which points back toward
UCAVs, uninhabited combat aerial vehicles.
coming sooner rather than later, the source predicts. Performance beyond human limits, perhaps. Flown remotely. Losing one is bad financially, but not a human tragedy. That 1970s Firebee drone outflying an F-4, a potent reminder of the potential.
So the future carrier isn't just a new ship. It's a whole new ecosystem of launch, recovery, manned, and unmanned systems.
Constantly adapting, constantly evolving. That seems to be the story.
So we've really covered a lot of ground today, from the core strategic reasons for carriers, through their long history, the incredible complexity of the ships themselves.
The sheer danger and skill of flight ops, the specialized planes, the intense training, the unique culture, the people.
From high-level strategy debates down to the tension of a cat-and-mouse game at sea, or just launching a jet into the night. It's staggering.
And yet, it always comes back to the people, their skill, their dedication, their judgment. That's the common thread the source emphasizes again and again.
We see that mix of old and new grease pencils and advanced computers working together, tackling tough cultural issues while pushing for integration and adding amazing new capabilities like missile defense.
It really drives home that these aren't just warships. They're these dynamic, incredibly complex ecosystems, tech, training, human experience, all focused on projecting power and providing options in a really unpredictable world.
Which leaves us with maybe one final thought for you, our listeners, to chew on. In an age where technology is just racing forward, superconductors, UCAVs, potentially changing everything, what does the future really hold for that indispensable human element? The people who, for now at least, remain at the very heart of these giant, powerful machines.